think we'll go ahead and get started. Ooh. So this is a session on family caregiver tips, and my name is Toni Hathaway, and I'm with the Kupuna Education Center at Kapiolani Community College. And it's about 7 years ago that the state set up our center and funded it as a place where we could do training for really practical kind of skills for folks. So today I'm gonna tell you a little bit about myself, and then I'm gonna tell you a bit about our center, and I'm gonna present some scenarios on family caregiving as a way of talking to you about tips, and then we'll talk about some resources also, okay? So I mentioned my name is Toni Hathaway. I am a social worker by profession. I have worked with seniors and their families for over 30 years, and I have run caregiver support groups. I have supervised case managers who work with seniors and their families, and currently I'm the education coordinator at the Kupuna Education Center. In addition to that, I, like many of you, have been a family caregiver. First, over 20 years ago, I took care of my husband when he had leukemia. Around that same time, I was sort of the backup caregiver for my mom, who was taking care of my dad. And then recently, I was caring for my mother, and she passed away just in April. So I've had several personal caregiver experiences also. I did grow up here in Hawaii. I got my MSW from University of Hawaii in Manoa, so I'm pretty familiar with the services that we have here in Hawaii also. This slide just gives you a little bit about our Kupuna Education Center. When we were funded, we were kind of given the task of addressing these issues, and so one was to provide family caregiver training, so we have the classes for family caregivers. Another was to train paraprofessionals or home care workers, so that when you need help, you have somebody that you can hire to come into your home. And the third was the active aging area, because as you probably have read about recently, this of course is the best way to stay healthy as long as possible. And today we're at the we're at the Aging in Place conference, and so the more active you can be, the more likely you are to be able to age in place in a sort of graceful way. And since we're the only community college that was funded by the legislature, we do link up with the other community colleges to hopefully promote the programs throughout the state also. So why are we interested in caregivers? Former First Lady Rosalind Carter says that there are only 4 kinds of people in the world. Those who have been caregivers. Can I see a show of hands? That would be me, and there must be some of you here that have been caregivers. Okay. Those who currently are caregivers. Who is currently doing caregiving? All right, most of you. Those who will be caregivers. I figure that's me again. As I tell people, I'm the one in the family who got the caregiver gene. Okay, so I'm the one who tends to be the person who is looked to for doing caregiving. And some of us get the caregiver gene, as I call it, and they just sort of rise to the occasion, and you're the one. Others get drafted. Okay, some of you may have been drafted into doing caregiving also. And how about those who will need caregivers? I figure that's going to be me again, and probably some of you. Both of my parents lived well into their late 80s and early 90s, so I figure the likelihood of my needing some care is pretty likely. So this is a chart on the Hawaii's elderly growth rate, and showing how it has exploded past the national average after the year 2000. Well, we're kind of well beyond the year 2000 here. And if you look at the chart, the blue line is the Hawaii. And so we are a little beyond 2010 there. So between 15 and 20% are age 65 and older of our population here. And the thing although this chart does not show that, the fastest growing group is really those over 85. So those are the folks that are going to be the most likely to need care. Okay, I'm going to talk about several scenarios from working with my family as well as working with various clients to give you an idea of some tips on caregiving. So the first one is called, I am Superwoman, where is my cape? And I'm sure I can be in 2 places at once if I just try hard enough. Okay, as caregivers, we usually try to do too much, and we're sure we can do it all because we're the best at it, and we really are trying hard, and we really care about the people that we're caring for. So, but sometimes you have to be in 2 places at once, and you really can't. And what happened to me was, this was when I was taking care of my husband years ago, and he was not having one of his good periods and had a really high fever and was sick at home. And my son was 6 years old at the time, and he came home from school and he didn't feel well, and I thought, oh, he's got the flu like every other kid, and it was just before Christmas. But he got quite a bit worse and was getting really listless, and my husband was a physician. He gets up and he checks him out and he goes, Toni, I really think he has appendicitis. And I'm like going, no, he cannot have appendicitis because I cannot handle his having appendicitis. But sure enough, so I had to rush him over to the doctor, check him out, has appendicitis. So that means I had to rush over to the hospital. So here I am, I have husband at home with fever of 102, and have to be with my son in the hospital who's about to have emergency surgery. And so, call up Mom. Mom lived here at the time, and I said, Mom, down at the hospital with Jeremy, and I need you to go up to the house and check on my husband and take him some soup for his meal for today. So my son was in the hospital for about 5 days, so I was kind of doing a shuttling back and forth. But this was one of my first experiences of learning to say yes when people offered to do something for me. Okay, so it turned out, and I was kind of pleasantly surprised because I wasn't expecting this, but a lot of friends said, oh sure, I'll go down and spend some time in the hospital with your son, and you can run home and get a shower and check on your husband. And my mom was happy to drop him off some meals. So it all ended up, working out okay. But I think the thing that we learn from this is that it really has to be a shift in our own mind first in terms of being able to accept help. Because our initial reaction as caregivers is usually to say, oh, no, I'm fine. I can do it. Okay? But if you're really going to do this for any length of time, you just really can't do it on your own. And even if you're the best, which you probably are, because I knew I was the best, and I really wanted to be there for both my son and my husband, I needed the help. And it's okay, and it's a good thing to accept help. Now, one of the things I learned about is there's a way to do this, okay, and be successful at it. And that's that when somebody offers, you give this some thought ahead of time so you're ready to say, yes, that would be great. They say, oh, I can come stay with your husband for a couple hours. I said, wow, that would be great. Is it possible for you to do that either Wednesday or Friday at 1 o'clock? Because then I can run out and go to the grocery store. So that's a very specific request. It's for a reasonable amount of time. And you would be surprised at how often people will then say yes. So you don't want to say, oh, can you come stay with them for a week, or even a day? That's probably asking too much. But if you ask for something very reasonable, maybe an afternoon, maybe just picking up some things from the grocery store for you, you really can get help that's very valuable to you, okay? And then that means you're not going to be the crabby person that you really don't want to be when you're taking care of the person that you really, really love, okay? So that's the first story. The second one is called Love, Health, and Shoes. And I was recently caring for my mom. She lived here for 40 years. And then one day, about 10 years ago, she said, I'm going to move into a retirement home, and I don't like the ones here, so I'm moving to the mainland. I went like, what? But anyway, strong-willed. You probably don't know any people like that, right? Probably just all the people you're taking care of. But anyway, so she moved back to the mainland and into independent living and a retirement home. And she was completely on her own, did all of her own meals. We had a really nice 90th birthday celebration for her in November on Maui. And at the end of January, she had some soreness in her jaw and went in and had some scans, and we discovered she had cancer everywhere. And it was like, whoa. She still wasn't very sick, to tell you the truth, but she had cancer everywhere. It was very fast moving, and she died 2 months later. And I was up there taking care of her because I'm the one with the caregiver gene, so I was the one who she wanted. And it's kind of what, it's like everybody in the family, including me, understood that, and that's what I wanted to do, but I was doing some sort of shuffling back and forth. But just to tell you a little bit about my mom, she was at this retirement home, and she was, there were lots of elderly people there. A lot of them were using walkers, right? A lot of them were using wheelchairs. And she would say, wow, people here really complain a lot about having to use, walkers and wheelchairs. And so when she had her hip surgery several years ago and she needed a walker, now she's in her 80s, but she gets online and looks them up and orders herself a little 3-wheeler, and she gets on the elevator with her walker with all the other people with their walkers, and she goes, mine's a Lamborghini, what's yours? And they're like, what? But she liked to add a sense of humor to things. So then when she said, when I have to be in a wheelchair, I'm going to get me a pair of those really fancy Jimmy Choo shoes that have the 5-inch heels on them. Because, of course, for the last 10 years, she's been wearing the funky, comfortable shoes like we're all wearing because she didn't want to fall and all of those kinds of things. So she goes, that's the one good thing about being in a wheelchair. I can have these 5-inch spiked heels. I'm like, well, okay. And then, time went by, and then she was diagnosed with the cancer, and she was getting weaker and weaker, and so she was in the wheelchair. So my cousin sends her this pair of Jimmy Choo shoes. And this is a picture of her. This is only in her muumuu, right, with her Jimmy Choo shoes on. And she's showing them to the hospice nurse in this picture. But the shoes sort of took on a mythology of their own. Everybody in the retirement home heard about the shoes because we rolled her down the hallway to go get her hair done in the salon, and everybody saw the shoes. And the woman who was coming up to help her, she would walk up with her walker, and she'd bring my mother her mail because she couldn't get down to get her mail anymore. And she says, oh, can I take the shoes down to the dining room and show everyone else the shoes? So, as I say, they sort of took on a mythology of their own. And I tell people, well, the shoes went far and wide, but there was never a scratch on the bottom because she never actually walked in them, because you can't even stand up in those shoes. I tried, let me tell you. Anyway, part of the idea here is that it's important to allow people that you're caring for to have a certain amount of independence. And I talk about being a care partner instead of a caregiver. And this idea comes from, let's see, his name is Dr. Thomas. He's a geriatrician. And this is a very subtle concept, but the whole idea is that people who are being cared for need to give something back also. They need to feel that independence. They need to feel like they can do something for you and that it's not just you doing something for them. So the story about the shoes is kind of my mother's way of being able to give back to those around her by, you know, kind of having this story and this mythology about the Jimmy Choo shoes. And as I say, everybody was talking about them. But I think this is a really important idea, that we allow people that we're caring for to do something for us too, and that we take the opportunity to allow those kinds of situations to happen. When you are the one, okay, you really have to learn to take care of yourself. Now, I teach these classes all the time. I've been working with caregivers for years. I went back to take care of my mom, and my sister says to me, after I'd been there a week, I'd been there, you know, taking care of her 24/7. We didn't know how long it was going to be. We thought it would be quite, you know, a while yet. And she says, well, let's go out to dinner. And I went, my first thought was, well, I can't go out to dinner because I'm caring for my mother. What are you talking about? And then I realized, I thought, wow, I've been here for 1 week and I'm already thinking I'm the only one that can do anything. Now, am I the best? You bet. Just like you think you're the best, and you probably are, because you probably know that person better than anyone else. But you can't be your best 24/7 if you don't get a break. And that's when I realized, okay. So I said to my sister, great, let's go out to dinner. And of course it was a good thing because we had things to talk about, because we knew there was going to be a lot to take care of after my mom passed away too. And my son was up there. He was 27. You know, he was very fond of his tutu. He, you know, left school and went up to be with her for several weeks. So he was there to stay with her. So that was fine. But again, it's okay to give yourself a break. And it's important because you don't want to be that crabby person, you know, that's where you're going to say things that you regret. Okay. One of the other things we discovered when I was up there is use technology. And in our case, getting a baby monitor was wonderful. And I say a baby monitor instead of an elder monitor because we tried several, and the baby monitors were the best, is all I can say. And, you know, this is basically a device where there's a unit in their room. There's a unit you can carry around with you or leave on the table, so you can hear them all the time. They don't have to yell for you. And at night, I could be sleeping in the bedroom, and I'm a pretty light sleeper when I have to care for somebody, and I could hear when she would wake up and be moving around in bed, and I could get up and go check on her. So it's a real saver in terms of time and just peace of mind. I'm going to mention home care briefly. We did have home care in to help us with her. We had them come in the mornings for a couple of hours. They could get her, you know, help her get up out of bed, get dressed, get her breakfast, get her shower, just sort of get her going for the day. And that gave me a little break. If I'd had a bad night, I could get a nap, or I could get up and get my own shower, not worry about her constantly, maybe have a leisurely breakfast or run out and get some groceries. We were just at the point of thinking we were going to need to have some at night also, because the last 2 nights before she passed away, I was pretty much up all night long, but then it turned out that she did pass away, so we didn't need that help. But you have to be sort of monitoring and thinking about what's going to work for you and for them. Now that takes some resources. I'm not going to kid you, it's not. If you have some resources, you have a lot more choices, because home care costs about $20 to $25 an hour. I want to mention hospice care, because hospice is something that folks are often reluctant to use. But I've had hospice care 3 times now in my family. I had it for my husband. He actually went to the hospice facility years ago when he died of leukemia. My mom had it for my dad at home, and we just had it from my mom recently. Now, when it came, the first time I was back there, I was setting up services. That's what we social workers do. So I said, Mom, let's get some hospice services in. She says, well, I don't know, I'll have to think about it. I said, well, let's have the nurse come up and talk to you. So she came up and talked to her, and she left some materials, and I called her up and I said, so did you talk to the hospice nurse? She says, yeah. I said, well, what do you think? And this is classic. So what does she tell me? She says, well, I think there are other people who could really use this a lot more than I can. Now, does that sound like anybody you know? Uh-huh. And I'm thinking, now I don't say this to her. I'm smart enough not to do that, but but I'm thinking, are you crazy? You're 90 years old and you just got diagnosed with cancer. Who could use hospice more than you, right? I don't say that. I said, well, why don't you read the stuff they left for you and think it over, okay? So I call her back a few days later, and she says, well, I did read it over, and I realized that they can actually do a lot more than they could when we had hospice when your dad was sick. And she says, I think it'll be a good idea. And I'm thinking like, oh my gosh, the earth moved, because my mother never changes her mind after she's made a decision. So I'm going, wow, this is great. So we bring in hospice. And the thing that's really nice about hospice is that they bring everything to you. It's it's stunning. So when you need medications, you get them that day or the next day. They can call up your physician or their own physician. You don't have to wait. And if they're on pain medications, I don't know if you realize this, but you have to actually go down to the doctor's office and get the prescription and physically take it to the pharmacy and then come back and give it to the person. With hospice, they just bring it right to you. And then if you need a change of medications, you can get it like that day or the next day. It's amazing. If you need equipment, they bring you hospital beds, they bring you incontinence supplies, they'll bring you oxygen, whatever you need. And again, it's very fast. And I don't know if any of you have experiences trying to get services at home. It usually takes quite some time. So I give hospice a big plug here because it really is helpful at the end of life. And then if the person dies at home, like my mom did, you call them and they just come. And of course, it's always in the middle of the night when that happens. And they come and they just tell you exactly what to do. And they call anybody that needs to be called and they take care of everything. So it's a great service. We have 4 here in Hawaii, by the way. Okay. One of the things we talk a lot about is how to take care of ourselves, but we don't necessarily do it. So I want us to do a little practicing of a few things here today. And one of the things that's important is that E word that none of us like, which is the exercise word. But exercise really does relieve stress. It's shown to, be one of the ways to keep your brain healthier. And again, as we've been talking about, this is a very stressful thing, caregiving is. So we're going to start by I have all this things here. I'll try not to get disconnected. But we're just going to do a simple thing sitting down first. You might want to put things away from your laps. And this is just a stretching exercise, okay? So we're just going to lean over and drop your head down and kind of move your hands down your leg and just let your arms dangle and relax. And then let's just kind of come back up gently. And these are not supposed to hurt, so only go as far as you can, okay? And let's do it one more time, okay? You're just going to lean over, and let your head rest down, move your arms down the leg and let your arms dangle. And then we're going to sit up again. And that's just kind of a nice stretch to do. This one I have to put down the microphone, the next one, because I need both hands. And we're going to stand up for this one, okay? Now, this one kind of opens up the chest and helps you breathe. So we're going to put the arms straight out like this, and we're going to keep them at shoulder level, and you just bring them back and breathe in. Take a big breath in and breathe out through your mouth and straighten your arms out. Okay, so let's do that again. Breathe in through your nose, big deep breath, arms back, and let's try that one more time. Breathe in through your nose and out through your mouth. Okay, now while we're standing up, I always have to kick my shoes off to do this. We're just going to do just some marching, okay? Just get the blood pumping a little bit. Now you have to be careful. I don't want anybody falling over, so to monitor yourself, the higher you lift your legs, the more aerobic it is. But again, and good, somebody's holding on to the chair in front of them. That's a good way to do that if you have some balance problems. Okay? Okay, I wanted to take a few minutes. You can sit down again. But this is how you just kind of sneak in a little movement and exercise during your day, okay? You may not be able to go take an hour-long walk or get to the gym or whatever that might be, but while you're sitting watching television with the person you're taking care of, you can add a few minutes of exercise. And if they're able to exercise, it's a very good thing for them too. So you might want to do something that the two of you can do together. All right, next story. Cheeseburgers and chili dogs. So when we were back taking care of my mom, before I got there, I had a cousin that was there visiting and taking care of her for a few days. And my mom said to her, "I want a cheeseburger from McDonald's." She goes, "Oh, okay." And she sends me a text and says, "Well, I'm on the McDonald's run. I'm going to get a cheeseburger for your mom." And she goes, "I don't know what I'm going to eat because I don't eat anything at McDonald's." And I said, "Don't sweat it. Go to Maggie's and get a salad for yourself." So then this is the cousin who has to improve on things, okay? Because she thinks that she will have a better idea. So now my mom asked for just a McDonald's cheeseburger. So my cousin decides she's going to get her a Happy Meal. So she gets the Happy Meal, the cheeseburger Happy Meal, and she has it on the dashboard in the car, and she takes a picture of it, and she sends it to me on my phone. She goes, "Oh, I decided to get her a Happy Meal." And I'm going, uh-oh. Now, I don't say this to her, right? I figure she's already gotten it. So she takes it in, she gives it to my mom. About 30 minutes later, I get another text. "I have been informed that the cheeseburger did not have a pickle, and it is cold, and that's because I went through the drive-thru." So the moral of this story is, get what they ask for. Don't think that you know better than they do, because you are going to pay if they do. And I'm kind of laughing, thinking, well, that was kind of predictable. But again, this is the cousin who thinks she has to improve on things. Then there's the chili dog story. Okay. So my son and I had been there maybe a couple of weeks. And my mom really hadn't been eating anything except boiled eggs and toast. And this is the night I was going to go out to dinner with my sister. And so I go back and I remind her that we're going out to dinner, and I ask her what she wants. And she goes, "I want a chili dog." I'm like, so I don't say it again, but what am I thinking? Are you out of your mind? All I can think of is, oh my gosh, if she has a chili dog, this is going to, she's just going to be really sick, and that's going to be really awful. So instead of saying that, I said, "Really?" I go, "Wow, I'm not sure I know where to get a chili dog in Spokane," which is where she was. And I said, "Well, Jeremy's not going to have the car tonight because, if you recall, my sister, we're going out to dinner." And she says, well, I'd really like that chili dog. I go, well, let me think about it. And so I leave the room and I'm thinking, oh man, this is a really bad idea. So I told my son, why don't you go back there and talk to Tutu, because she says she wants a chili dog for dinner. So he goes, okay. So he goes back there. Now, remember, I'm the social worker, right? So I have all the experience in knowing how to read people and how to deal with them, right? So I'm still freaking out about the chili dog, and he comes back out and he goes, well, I talked to Tutu and she said, I probably shouldn't have the chili dog, but I was just really thinking about how, my friend Doe Bright back in Hawaii and how we used to go to Holiday Mart. Now, that tells you how far back it was, because it's been Daiye and now Don Quixote. And then we used to go and have a chili dog. So, as it turns out, again, this was an opportunity for her to sort of express what she was thinking about and remember herself as somebody who did volunteer work, who had friends, and she was thinking about, the food really in the context of this good friend of hers. Now, her friend had passed away years ago, and that's probably another reason she was thinking about her. So, it didn't turn out to be a disaster. It turned out to be a really good thing, but partly because I didn't say, are you out of your mind, and we gave her a chance to kind of tell us what it was about. Now, again, my son, the grandson, the 27-year-old, is the one who figures this out, not the social worker with all the experience, right? So, again, don't underestimate the value of reminiscing. Give people a chance, because again, this was her way of giving something back to us, right? I talked about how important that is. And we tend to not think of caregiving in those terms, but I think it's a really important part of it. Okay. Sudden strange behavior. Yes, it really is the meds. I've had this experience a number of times. The first one was when I was my first social work job over 30 years ago, and I was asked to come out and see an elderly man, and the family was very concerned about him because he was acting really wacky and couldn't really answer questions and couldn't carry on a conversation. And I went out to see him, and sure enough, he was pretty strange. And so I suggested that he be hospitalized and we try and find out what was going on. Well, it turned out, and of course, I didn't know too much at that point because this was my first job as a social worker. And it turned out he had recently been released from the hospital, and they had added a new medication on just before he'd left. And of course, it's a very common experience, right? And that medication had caused a really terrible reaction with some of the other medications he was taking, and it really whacked him out. So they got him off of that and put him on something else, and I went out to see him another week later. Totally different guy. He's just completely clear, acting, could have a reasonable conversation, answer any questions. So medications can have very weird reaction, especially if it's something being added, something new. So make sure you keep your eyes open for that. Same thing happened to my dad. Pain medications are notorious for this. I went over to see him. My mom was taking care of him at home, and he'd been bedridden for a couple of months by now, so he was pretty weak and lying in bed. And I went to see him, and he just like grabs my arm and he goes, "Toni, you have to take me home with you right now because they're trying to kill me." I'm like, whoa, So the medication had made him really paranoid, and so we had to get the medication changed, and then he was fine. We found a different medication that worked. But again, be alert to medication reactions because they can cause some very bizarre things to happen. Okay. Another thing that probably you folks are familiar with, it's always the middle of the night when things like this happen. So it's 2 o'clock in the morning, And my mom, I heard my mom on the monitor, and she asked me to come in and help her get up on the commode. Because she was pretty weak at that point, and so we had moved on to using the commode. And she loved long, silky nightgowns, okay? Now, I teach home care workers, and I teach how to help people get out of bed and do the transfers on the commode, and we always say use a gait belt. And I'm going, she has a mass right here. I can't use a gait belt, right? So I'm using all my other skills, and I'm helping her get on the commode, and I'm like, we're doing this slippery sliding thing with this nightgown, and I finally get her back in bed, and I go, Mom, the nightgown's gotta go. I said, you and I are going to end up on a heap on the floor the next time we do this. And she says, okay. And so now I think I have a brilliant, very simple solution to this. I said, well, why don't we just cut them off short? She looks at me absolutely horrified and says, no, you can't do that. I'm going to give them away. I'm like, okay. Obviously that idea wasn't going to work. So I said, okay. Our friend Shirley's coming over tomorrow. She said she wanted to spend some time with you. So I'm going to run out and get you some shorty nightgowns while you're doing that. She says, okay. So my son and I went out and went shopping. And first I tried Target, and they didn't have anything. And then I went to Macy's, and fortunately they did, and they were having a sale. My son had been at a different department, and he comes back, and I picked out a few shorty nightgowns. And I said, well, what do you think of these for Tutu? And he goes, you can't give that to Tutu. He's horrified. I picked out this bright pink with these spaghetti straps and these roses all around the neck. It was very stunning. And I said, no, you watch when we give this to her. I want you to see her reaction. So we go home, give her the package, and she opens it up, and her eyes just light up, and she has this huge smile on her face, and she goes, wow, this is just like the ones your father used to get me. And my son's like, I am so out of here. I do not want to hear this. But she was so happy with it. So again, it's sort of the idea of not really focusing on what makes us comfortable or what we want, but what would make her happy. And again, so she's going to be in bed from then on, right? And she was just so delighted with this nightgown, but it was it was sort of funny. So again, trying to do some problem solving with humor and dignity. I thought whacking those other ones off was going to be great, but that was not going to work as far as she was concerned. So, okay, we're going to do one more kind of stress reduction activity. Mindfulness, you might have started hearing more about mindfulness again. It was kind of popular a number of years ago, but now it's coming back as a way of stress reduction. And centering is really a type of mindfulness, and it's one of the things we teach in our classes on Alzheimer's disease and dementia, because it's a really simple way to kind of give yourself a little break and refocus. When you're about to say something, you know you're going to regret later, okay? And especially when you're working with somebody with Alzheimer's disease, if any of you are, you know what I mean. You're going to be, kind of slammed up against the wall a few times, and you're going to feel like saying something as you know you're going to regret later. So let's try centering. You can do this sitting down. And again, this is kind of a breathing exercise, where you're going to breathe in through your nose really deeply and right down into your belly, and you might want to put your hand on your belly, and then breathe out through your mouth. And we're going to do this maybe 5 or 6 times, and then I'm going to kind of ask how that feels. So this is how it works. You breathe in through your nose, right down to your belly, and then out through your mouth. And again, in through your nose. And again. And again. And one more time. So, how does that make you feel? Does it help you relax? This almost always works for me. Everybody has to kind of find the thing that works for them. But the thing that's really nice about centering is that you can do it anywhere and anytime. So if you find yourself getting, upset or whatever, you can just take a moment, do some centering breaths, and you will. It gives your brain a break. It kind of stops whatever dynamic is going on and gives you a chance to regroup and think of something kind to say instead of maybe what you were inclined to say right away. Okay? I'll check my time here. Oh, we're almost done, aren't we? Okay, I have to hurry up a little bit. Here's some pictures of the classes that we have at the Kupuna Education Center. There's a handout in the back. Some of them are green and some are white, and this is our schedule for fall classes. This is some of our students practicing some of the skills that we teach. And our program began back in the summer of 2007. And we offer family caregiver classes. We offer some hands-on skills for family caregivers where we use the nursing labs, and you actually get a chance to practice the skills, not just see them demonstrated, but you actually practice them. And then we also have an informational class called What Family Caregivers Want and Need to Know. We also train home care workers in what's called the Schmeeding Elder Stay at Home program. This was developed at the Schmeeding Center in Arkansas, and they've been on the forefront of home care worker training. And this is provides you people that you can hire if you need to. It's a 3-level training. It starts out with 25-hour training at the first level, Elder PAL, and then people can take more of the levels if they want or feel they need them. And in these classes, unlike the family caregiver classes, people do have to apply, and then we do test them, and they're given a certificate. We also have a dementia and Alzheimer's disease class. First, it's a 16-hour training. I'm going to whip through these. And then we also have started some active aging classes, fall prevention, career transitions for boomers. One of our new ones is how to keep your brain healthy as you age. And we also have a couple of financial planning classes. In addition to our classes, we have a Kupuna Connections TV show. This is a weekly show on Alelo, and we interview local experts on issues related to aging and family caregiving. And this is our contact information. We have a very useful website, and this is all on that handout if you pick one up, and our phone number. All of our past TV shows are also on the website, by the way, so you can watch them anytime. I'm going to just sort of quickly go through. There are lots of different tips for family caregivers. This one happens to be off of the caregiveraction.org website. Seek support, take care of your own health, accept offers of help, communicate effectively with doctors. Caregiving is hard work, so take respite breaks often. Watch out for signs of depression. Be open to new technologies that can help you care for the person. Organize medical information so it's up to date and easy to find. Make sure legal documents are in order. And the most important one, give yourself credit for doing the best you can in one of the toughest jobs there is. The last slide here, I have a few web resources. There are lots of great things on the web. These are some of my favorites. The first 3 are local organizations. The last 4 are national organizations. And if you go to any of these websites, they have other resources on there that are very helpful too. The last one is the American Society on Aging, and it's really a professional website, but they have webinars for family caregivers on all kinds of issues, and they have some really excellent ones. I think we are about the end of our time, so I hope you found some things that are helpful. I probably have a moment or two to answer a couple of questions before you have to be on your way to your next session. Anybody have a question? Yes?
What about siblings' conflicts, responsibility, complaint?
Yeah.
Or how you deal with it?
Yeah. You know, sometimes you can get together and work it out on your own, but sometimes it helps to have somebody there that's doesn't have a vested interest, let's say, okay, that can help you have the conversation and allow everyone to express whatever they need to talk about. And you can talk about it in terms of what people's strengths and weaknesses are, what they can and cannot do. It's very common, unfortunately, to have family conflicts, as you are probably familiar with. Not everybody is good at the same things. Not everyone has the same amount of time to put into it. But hopefully, especially maybe with a third party that can help you kind of mediate the conversation and not have any one person monopolize and give everybody a chance to be heard, that you could come up with a plan that at least would be one that people can agree to. It may not be one that everybody thinks is great, but at least it's workable. And then you probably are going to have to revisit it after you've tried it out for a while and see if it's working for everybody, and make sure that everybody that has agreed to something actually follows through on that. And then you may have to discuss it with them if they don't and find out why they can't do that if they said they would. It's not easy to have these conversations sometimes, especially if you have family members with very strong opinions or very strong personalities. You know, in my own family, I have two sisters, okay? But I told you I was the one who was going to take care of my mom, and I always knew that. My sisters always knew that, and it's not, I mean, we kind of get along okay, but not everybody was going to be the right person to spend all that time with my mom. Now, my one sister, she's a physician. Wow, she was a whiz at getting all of the medical stuff taken care of, right? But she and my mom both like to be in charge. So that doesn't work well, okay? I'm okay with other people being in charge. I mean, I kind of like to be in charge, but I'm okay if I'm not in charge. My sister really likes to be in charge, and my mother likes to be in charge, so that wasn't going to work. So you have to try and, you know, look at what people bring to it and try and work with what people can. And for some people, if they're far away, maybe they can send monetary help, you know, or maybe they can visit and provide respite occasionally. I mean, there are all kinds of things that can work out, but it's not an easy thing. I won't stand here and tell you it is. That can cause a lot of trouble in families. Anything else? Okay, well, thank you. Oh, yeah?
It's hard to find somebody where you can get family together to discuss.
Uh-huh.
Do we have to call a social worker, or how do we find them?
You can contact the Elderly Affairs Division of the City and County of Honolulu. They're the ones that put out the information book. It's this one on family caregiving. They should be able to help you. Yes?
You mentioned there are 4 hospices
Yes.
in Hawaii.
Uh-huh.
What is the main difference among the 4, and what is the cost?
Pretty much if you have to be recommended by the doctor for hospice, meaning that they say that the person is not likely to live more than 6 months. Okay, Medicare covers hospice services. We have 4 hospice here. The 2 oldest are St. Francis Hospice and Hospice Hawaii. The 2 new ones are Island Hospice and Bristol Hospice. I believe they all provide hospice in your own home. I believe they all have a way of providing hospice in a facility also. St. Francis has a couple of facilities that are freestanding. Hospice Hawaii has a couple of homes that they have as facilities. I'm not as familiar with the other 2, but I think they provide some hospice services in some of the facilities that are already here. Okay? Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you so much.